And then did you have that on the whole trip? Like, what happens when you got your first char?
Oh my God, we couldn't find them, and so the next run it was like literally maybe 2 or 3 more likely spots and I was just like, man, where are these things, you know? And so we eddied out, and we're walking up this gravel bar. Sarah goes downstream, I go upstream, and Burr like runs to the top of this cliff on river left, and so you can get the aerial view, and you know, we're looking, and I never forget this because it's the best. Burr's like, they're everywhere, and I was like, and he just starts pointing, you know, and then he's like, it was so cool because he was so excited. I mean, it was just like, and we all were, right? And so we start, it was this like river left bend that went into this cliff band. And so it was just, and then a lot of water, a lot of CFS coming in and really heavy current. And it's all like gravel bar. And so it made it really hard to get to the really big ones. And I'm like, Burr, how big? And he's like, oh my God, he's like, I can't tell, but he's like 30 plus below me. And I'm like, what? And I was like, so I was just like, ugh. And like, if you've ever been in that, I love it. Like, you get all fumbly and you start cussing up your casts and like, you know, you're nervous. And like, but there's like up there, I was like, oh, what am I nervous about? Like, I've got nowhere to be, like, except for right here. You know, it's just like, so I just like started fishing, and it was so deep. I remember I kept my PFD on, I had my waders on, and I was like up to my waist. And anyone's ever waded before, wading's hard, right? And like that much force, I could walk up, and I was getting pushed downstream no matter how hard I was like pushing against the river with my legs, and the gravel was giving way. So I was almost like drifting and like casting these super heavy line with a heavy streamer, and I was like getting the drift, and I wasn't quite getting deep enough. And so I like tweaked the weight, and then I remember I connected with my first one, and I was just like, oh my God. And I think Sarah got the first one. Yeah, Sarah did. And it was just like, we got the first one, and we forgot how to hold a fish. We forgot how to, you know, we were both so nervous. You know, we were like so excited. It was just like, it was just fishing with your friends. It was amazing.
Hello, my name is Lizzie Scully, and I'm the co-owner of Four Corners Guides and the co-author of the Packraft Guide with Steve Fassbinder, aka Doom. We run a multi-sport adventure guide service based out of the very small town of Mancos, Colorado, home of Alpaca Raft, the Mancos Brewing Company, and many other incredible small businesses. We live about a half hour outside of town at Skullbinder Ranch, our 35-acre base camp on the border of Mesa Verde National Park and the Ute Mountain Ute Tribal Park. Late last year, we started this podcast, A Beginner's Guide to Packrafting and Bike Rafting, to bring you another learning channel for these activities. In this podcast, we'll share helpful informational interviews with experienced athletes, guides, and others in the community, along with how-to episodes and storytelling. If you have any requests or questions, ping us at fourcornersguides@gmail.com or comment on our social platforms. So hello, this is Lizzie Scully, and we are back with episode number 9 of A Beginner's Guide to Packrafting and Bike Rafting. And today we are here with Thad Ferrell. Thad is a multi-sport adventurer, pack rafter, bike packer, bike rafter, and longtime fly fisherman. And he is an expert fly fisherman. He runs his own guide service, Kingfisher Fly Guides, along with working for various other companies. And in 2025, Thad will be doing some packraft fly fishing guiding with Four Corners Guides using alpaca rafts. And so today we wanted to chat with Thad about this newish sport, fly fishing, packrafting, packraft fly fishing. Not quite sure what you call it yet, but it's the melding of those two activities into one. And we'll talk a little bit first about Thad's past and how he got into fly fishing and packrafting also. And then we're going to talk about his most recent packraft fly fishing trip up to Alaska with the company Patagonia. So welcome, Thad, to the podcast. Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Lizzie. Appreciate it. My name's Thad, and I live in Durango, Colorado. And about 7 years ago, I started Kingfisher Fly Guides, which I was super excited about. That was a kind of a long-time goal of mine, something that I thought I wanted to do a while back, but it literally took some crazy life events for that to kick into gear, and thanks to the support of my wife and my family and my friends, I've been able to make a pretty good go at it. I feel pretty lucky to be able to do that for a living.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And can you tell us how you got into fly fishing?
Definitely my father's fault. My dad was a avid fly fisherman for trout, and definitely a not ideal part of the country. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, so there weren't a lot of cold water fisheries around. Closest were in Arkansas. But every year he made a point to gather the troops, my family, my sister, my mom Kay, and we'd load us up, and we were gone, it'd be 2 or 3 weeks minimum, and he would take us to Montana and Idaho and all the great western trout fisheries. We would end up in Creede, Colorado. We had some friends who had a place there. I was fortunate enough to learn a lot on the Rio Grande, and now I get to guide over there, so it's a full circle. I have a lot of memories of that place, and rivers are funny. They change. The sayings, you can never step into a same river twice. But they just, over there, that place is a pretty special one. I think all rivers are special, and they all kind of tell their different story. And the best part about it is fly fishing, you can stand in one and just watch and wait. And thanks to fly fishing, you don't look like a crazy person. It's a great excuse to stand in the river. So that's sometimes it's a pretty special thing for me, and I love to share it with people. So that's why I love to guide, but I also still love to do it. And that was the deal I made with myself. If I ever got off work, even if I ever did not want to fish personally because of the work, I kind of told myself that it might not be the right choice. And so far, I still want to go fish. So
cool. So I'm going to steer the conversation a little bit, and I really want to know actually more about you and your mom fly fishing too, because your mom was a pretty big fly fisher woman as well.
She was a beautiful human, and she left us. I lost my mom when I was 12. She had a really long fight with breast cancer, but my mom really instilled in me, she saw something in me that parents see in their kids, and sometimes you never see again unless you take the time to work on yourself and realize certain things about yourself. And one thing she said to me in a very early age was, we lived in Memphis, and there were these great birch trees, and I was probably 5 or 6, and I was really young, and it was fall, and fall was always a really great time in Memphis because you've made it through the hot and humid summer, and then you kind of get a bit of respite with the autumn, and the colors are changing. And we lived, surrounded by these ginkgo trees, but there was this birch tree on the side yard that would turn like golden yellow, like the aspens out west, as did the ginkgos. And I pointed it out, and I guess that was kind of it struck my mom because that was a weird thing for a 5-year-old to maybe do, But kids know a lot more than we give them credit for, I guess. And I said, that's a beautiful tree. I don't remember what I said. And my mom very seriously said, Thaddeus, never lose that. And to me what that meant was, never lose that that insight or that ability to see beauty. That's just the way I feel about it. And so I've kind of taken that charge throughout my life, maybe to my detriment, but
so
yeah. Anyway, sorry.
No, and you've imparted this on your kids because both of them love the outdoors and love fishing. And doesn't your daughter tie flies?
My daughter ties flies, and my son is probably one of the fishiest humans I know. Yeah, he loves it. I can only get Hazel to cast. Hazel doesn't do anything Hazel doesn't want to do, so she can cast, but maybe one day she'll want to go fish with her old man.
But she ties flies. That's so funny. What do you think it is about tying flies that your daughter loves?
It's just creating, bless her heart. She's very much like me. But that's the great thing about fly fishing. There's so many facets to it. You can fly tie, you can fish for all these species of fish, you can hike, you can wade, you can packraft. And it takes you to these amazing places. And, in the end, it's like climbing too, It usually ends up being about the people that you share it with,
Tell me about your multi-sport adventuring and how you got into, did you, I know you were a cyclist, so did you start out like Doom and Packraft at the same time you started the big cross-country adventures? Or like, what was the morphing of the multi-sport adventure lifestyle?
I raced like Steve. I raced mountain bikes and road bikes. I raced a lot of road bikes, and I loved cyclocross, yet another fall sport. I did that a lot in Memphis, and that mountain biking drew me to Durango. That's how I got a job. I was a bike mechanic in Telluride for a number of years, and that's what eventually made the leap out west. I bounced around a lot. I still lived out of my truck after high school and climbed full time, and that was amazing. Went to St. John's College for about a year and a half, but I was still so obsessed with climbing. It kind of pulled me away from that. That's probably one regret. I still wish I finished there. St. John's was a pretty amazing place.
So were you racing bicycles that went at the same time you were climbing, or?
No, I took a kind of a long break from climbing. I still kind of dabbled in it, but I really got into cycling.
How old were you?
I'd been mountain biking with my dad again since I was like 13, but I started racing, seriously in my 20s, and I wasn't. But I liked the endurance stuff, and then so I really got into single speeds, and I got into singles, like 100 milers. I started doing those, and then around about that time, I got the job in Telluride, and then my girlfriend at the time, Wally's mother, we had Wally, and we ended up in Durango, and I was cruising around Durango and thinking about, what I wanted to, what shop I wanted to work at, because I was a mechanic at the time.
Bike mechanic.
Bike mechanic, yeah. Yeah, for sure. I stopped in at Durango Cyclery, and Russell was his owner then. I went back in the back, and then the original founder and owner of Durango Cyclery, Rick Elliott, was working in the back. And so the former owner had sold it to Russell, and now he was wrenching in the back, and that really hit a chord with me. I was like, that's the kind of shop I want to work at. And they didn't have room for me at the time, and then I went and got another job at another shop, and then a spot opened up, and I started working next to Rick, and Rick has become one of my best friends, and he had this love for fly fishing too, and he introduced probably me to one of my favorite rivers ever, is the Lower Dolores. Once again, different rivers, different loves, and really more about the people.
So tell me about the insertion of packrafting into the adventures. Climbing, fishing, biking, where did packrafting come in?
That's your husband's fault.
Okay. I think that he's at fault for a lot of people.
I know, a lot of good things. I met Steve through John Bailey, who worked at the cyclery, and he and I became fast friends and shared a lot of adventures together. Rode a lot. These Thursday night single speed rides were kind of infamous, I guess, now at this point, but in a good way. And Steve started working at Alpaca, and he just kind of was like, hey, there are these, check these out. And it was just kind of this seamless thing. And we started doing more, combining more biking and paddling.
Can you tell me about the first time that you got into packraft? Did you put a bike on your boat the first time, or what was
the first time? The first time, I think it was an old black Scout. I think it was a really old. It was all black Scout. Yeah.
With yellow?
No,
just all black.
Just all black. It was like kind of like Knight Rider. And I remember, they got like flipped and smelter. It was, I don't know, like one of the most like poignant memories. Like it was early on. I remember Steve and I playing in the Whitewater Park, and then I got so cold, which is a theme that I've carried on to this day. Like I get really cold easily. I was like, I'll run the shuttle. It was like 6 miles, but I could still warm back up. And like when you're that cold in the river, and it was, but I was like, man, these things are kind of cool. And I really never, I had paddled in high school. I went to, Nantahala Outdoor Center, which ironically Kent Ford started. The paddling was part of the paddling program there, and then full circle, now he's one of my paddling mentors, and so that was kind of neat. But it never really took us to. I liked it, I loved it. I canoed with my dad, but I never really got into paddling whitewater. I mean, it was much like Steve. To me, it was more of a tool, and I kind of was like proficient enough at paddling not to make any serious mistakes, but I was horrible. I wasn't very good.
Can you share with me a little bit about that epic trip that you and Steve did on bikes and boats and climbing towers? What was it? The
Charlie Fowler Tower Tour.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of like historical in terms of who else does that kind of thing, or did that kind of thing back then. Like nowadays, Tommy Caldwell and Alex Honnold just biked to Alaska and climbed
to the Double Stump.
Yeah. But y'all were, I think they call it, this is really funny, they call it eco-pointing now. I told Steve last night, I was like, hey, guess what? You are a pioneer in eco-pointing. He's like, what the fuck are you talking about?
I saw that, and those guys are amazing. And of course, I think they got fried for that because there was like a van in the background or something. But the Fowler Tour. So it was named after Charlie Fowler, who was a larger than life hero of mine. That was kind of one reason I moved to Telluride, was in hopes of running into Charlie Fowler. I only met him once, like bouldering, like around town. And of course, he's just, a climber. Like Charlie was a climber's climber, right? And amazing. But you talk about a really diverse guy, right? He was an amazing ice climber, amazing mountaineer. Amazing. So he did everything. Jack of all trades, but he was not like master of none. He was like master at everything he decided to do.
And so your tour was an inspiration on a multi-sport level?
Yes. So Steve and I came up with these towers. Some were towers that Charlie had gotten the first ascents on, desert towers. Some were not. Some were like conducive to the route we chose, like made sense. And so we started in, lo and behold, Bradfield Bridge, Lower Dolores, right at the put-in for what you would do the whitewater section for. And then we rode.
Wait, so you put your bikes on your boats?
Bikes on the boats.
Through the whitewater section?
Through the whitewater section. No, we didn't float there. We rode up and over to Psycho Tower. So that first day, we rode all day. It was amazing. We went up and over the Glade and down into Gypsum Valley, and then ended up at Psycho Tower. And then that afternoon, Steve was like, well, which route do you want to do? And I just remember being so jazzed, this is like what I'm, in my head, that's like what I'm supposed to do. and with like my best buddy, and we had a friend, Daniel, who's with us on the first leg. He was a great guy. It was the first time I met him and became, once again, great friends. He's an awesome guy.
Did he climb with you?
No, he stayed. He hated climbing, didn't want to climb. But yeah, we went that day. We went and we did he's like, what do you want to do? There's like standard route, the 5'9" on the side, or there's like a little 5'11" variation. And I was like, let's do the 5'11". And so like we ran up there after we like made camp, sort of, and we summited the tower at sunset. Like, it was just amazing.
Did you start the trip out with everything on your bikes?
Yeah, so we had full desert racks, bikes, food, everything.
For how many days did you have food for?
We were out. Well, we did resupply in Moab as we rode through, but everything else was
Was that like after a week you resupplied, or what?
About a week. So we were out for 2 weeks.
So how heavy were your bikes?
Oh my God. In the hundreds of pounds. We went to, or not, about 100, maybe 90. I don't know. They were heavy. You could barely lift them. Like, I remember we went and Ron Andrews, who owns King Cage, he did some modifications on our racks. I think Steve had his Surly Karate Monkey. I had my Fargo.
Aren't those Karate Monkeys heavy?
Yeah, they're steel.
Wow.
Well, steel's not heavy. It's just tough.
It's not heavy. It's just tough. Okay.
No, they were great bikes. Awesome bikes.
So then, how many towers did you climb in the first week?
Oh my gosh, I'll see. The first week, there were not as many towers. After Psycho, we put on the Dolores, which was more or less a trickle, and we floated through the wilderness section, what we could. I have to look at the map. I'm getting old. Then what did we do? We floated there. Pretty much the first part was just a lot of lugging gear around, I think, and then we went all the way to the confluence of I have to look.
The Colorado.
No. We went all the way around to the little town of Gateway.
Okay.
And then that's when we finished the rest of that section. We would kind of combine what we could float and what we could ride. We went through the hanging flume.
So you went to the confluence of the San Miguel.
Yeah,
Dolores,
exactly.
And then you paddled from there because there was more flow.
Exactly. Yeah. So we got some more juice in the Dolores at the flume. First time I went through the flume.
Oh.
And I remember that little rapid, and now we I remember being a little gripped. Yeah, it was great. It was just like this awesome desert. It was just like cruising through the desert.
So how many towers did you climb all together?
I think it was like 10 to 12.
How long were you out for?
2 weeks. We did, we did the next day after Psycho, there's all these little towers. And I think Steve and I climbed like 5 or 6 of them.
Was this so you were biking at this point, or you were on the river?
We were just cruising around. There's all these little mini towers.
Oh.
We were just getting some climbing in the next morning. And then we did Predator Tower, which on the way out to Moab. And then that's when we got on the Colorado. Oh, we did Castleton on the way to Moab too. That was amazing. Yeah, it was the best. We just woke up and rode or paddled and climbed every day. And then Mike Kiriak met us in Moab and was the second part of the trip. And that was the first time I met Mike. Like literally, I'd heard of, I knew Mike from Steve, but I also knew Mike from, he's an amazing endurance athlete, it's just, and we have a very similar sense of humor, so we just hit it off great. It was great. Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about packraft fly fishing. Packraft fly fishing, what does that mean?
Packrafts, without exaggerating, have changed my life. I wouldn't be doing what I do. They're amazing. And so with, fly fishing's gotten more popular, which is, people can argue the pros and cons of that, but I think it's a good thing because people are getting outside. They're getting away from the computer, and they're appreciating the planet. And hopefully with that appreciation, that's going to instill in them, the impetus to protect it.
So fly fishing's become more popular. And when did you first hear about, or you think about pairing the two?
I tried it. Fishing out of any watercraft solo is bonding like a belly boat or something that you control without your hands. It's kind of a futile endeavor, right? You have to control the craft, and you got to fly fish, which is so much going on anyway. And I would try it out of that little Scout. I remember specifically my friend Ben and Rick. We were, on an overnight fly fishing on the Lower Dolores, and we wade fished all day. And then there's a spillway, and I was like, man, there's some big fish in there. And, just like anything, it's like just far enough out that you can't quite cast. And I'll never forget, it was my birthday. And I hooked into this rainbow, and it just dragged me all over the spillway.
In the boat?
In the boat, yeah. And they were just on shore laughing their ass off the whole time. They're like, oh, you're going to land him yet? I'm like, just a sec. And I think he finally, had spent enough that I was able to net him, but it was just hilarious, and the fish was fine, but it was just I was like, man, this is not really, I knew that it wouldn't really work, but I had to try. And then probably it was when the Forager first came out, when Alpaca came out with the prototype of the Forager, and you were working in Alpaca, and it was like this press release going on the Gunny, and we walked down above the Chucker, or not above Chucker, but above the Chucker put in, down the Warner Trail, which, and then there's those fish get hiked to and fished to, but they don't get floated to, like drift boat. And I remember doing that, and with you and Steve, that was kind of a Scout trip, right? And I was just that day I was just like, oh my God, this is kind of silly, wow.
Because of the access?
Because the access, and fishing to pressured fish, those fish get a lot of pressure, and it gets harder, they get smarter.
But between Chucker, between Warner and Chucker, you can't really carry a drift boat down there because the trail... Definitely can't carry a drift boat. Definitely, Tell us about the trail going down there.
Oh, it's horrendous. It's a... It's not for the... What's the euphemism?
Faint of heart?
Faint of heart, yeah.
It's really, really steep.
It's incredibly steep. And you don't realize how sore you are until the next day, and your legs are yelling at you pretty hard. It's awesome.
So that was an eye-opener for you, that trip that we did.
It was. It sealed it. I was like, oh, okay. And then, you roll up on Chucker, and that's where all the donkeys take the big rafts down, and there are a lot of commercial trips, rightfully so, because it's amazing down there. And they're kind of looking at us what the, all the guides were looking what are y'all doing, Yeah, it was a great trip. It was an amazing trip. And then shortly after that, Steve and I had a random weekend and wanted to hang out, and we went up to, I'm not going to give it the name.
You went somewhere.
We went to a body of water and hiked in. And
with the Forager.
With the Forager.
The prototype.
Yeah, that red prototype.
That red prototype.
Yeah,
right.
That's a sweet boat. And it was crazy. I've hiked in that spot a lot, and you kind of go up or down, inevitably fish, you're wade fishing, and I was like, I think this will work. We just float down. And Steve was like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's do it. And Steve's not a fly fisherman, so, we tried, we did we had the shred apart paddle, and we did the C2 style, and then I was like, we got to fish. And then he's not a fisherman, so he didn't want to fish, so it was great. And I just I just remember catching so many fish, I started feeling greedy, and I was like, I'm good. And he's like, really? And I was like, I think that was like, that's when I was just like, oh my God, this is nuts.
Because you wouldn't be able to have towed a drift boat to this particular area.
No, yeah, it just been, or yeah, even a raft, even there's no way. And we did it in a day, half day, and spent the night that night, and I think we went to work the next morning. It was amazing.
Cool.
And looking at that, it's just like packrafts. You start looking at rivers differently. You start figuring things out differently, and so that sense of adventure that ultimately I think everyone wants. Or
Get places where nobody else gets to go.
Yeah, that's a home run, right? I mean, So that I think that's, especially for people that want to do it on their own. They don't necessarily want to hire a guide to go drift boat fishing, which is great. I love it. I mean, that's, given the choice, I'd get in a drift boat any day of the week. But the compactability of a forager, which enables you to go to wilder places, it's kind of changes the whole dynamic.
Could you explain a little bit the mechanics of packraft fly fishing? What are you doing? What's Steve doing when you go together?
Yeah, so the Forager is an amazing boat. It was one of their first two-person boats, I believe. The Gnu was its predecessor.
That's right, but that was like a race boat. And it was like a kneel down. I think you knelt on it like a race canoe or something. It was for
flatwater, right?
Yeah, it was for adventure racing.
Right.
They invented it for adventure racing. I think Jason. What was I'm forgetting his last name. Duh.
Oh no, I remember.
Yeah, Jason. Anyway, cool dude, but he I think he was working with Alpaca to get that made for the adventure races. I think I have to double check on that.
Right. And
Jason Magnus.
Yeah, and the Forager, was coming off that Alaska. Once again Alaska. The backcountry hunters and fishermen, and the fish part.
Thor's obsession, I think, had something to do with that.
Yes, thankfully there you go. It's just like climbing. It gets in you, and it doesn't really let go. And that's how I feel. That's what fly fishing is to me too. It's this nagging thing. Like right now, I'm sitting in here with you, and I'm thinking like, wow, I could maybe, get a little fishing in on the way home, or, that's what I'm always thinking about.
So back to mechanics.
Yeah, sorry. Oh yeah, mechanics.
Yeah. I know,
Squirrel.
you're slicing off
So yeah, the way it works is the shred apart paddle. There may be others. To my knowledge, Aquabound is the only one that makes one like that. I think when it's put together like a kayak paddle, it's like 270 centimeters, I believe.
270? Okay, I don't think it's quite that long.
Maybe 240. I think it's 240.
I think it's 240.
240, sorry. And fish guiding, bigger. It cuts in part and becomes canoe style. So the way it ends up is big water, like complicated rapids. You're going to go into like C2 style. You have your rods probably stowed up, in their tubes. In the front, under the bow bag, they usually fit. The 4-piece fits really well under a bow bag and still really protected. And then when the water lessens up, you can put that 240 kayak paddle together. The angler is going to be in the front. And then the rear guide, I guess you call him, is, drift boat style after that. And so, just like in a drift boat or a raft or another inflatable, they're putting you on that line and holding you, back paddling or front paddling. keeping your drift. So that's, just like you would in a drift boat, except, you're 1-to-1. And I think Steve, one day that we were down rivers, we went through, he got us through a class 3. It was real bony. This is fishable flows. Whitewater, there's definitely going to be rivers that'll have complicated rapids, but it's not going to be at high water that you're going to be them on, because you want fishable flows, right? So they're usually going to be lower water is, kind of the way it works out with most rivers. High water is fun for the boaters. Lower water is when you're going to see the more fishermen.
And when I imagine that it's similar to drift boating, but also different. So when you're pack rafting, if he's taking you through a class 3 rapid and you're still able to fish, what are some different skills that you would learn? Or if you were taking a course, we're going to be teaching courses in 2025, what are the skills that you would teach someone in a pack raft?
You would definitely learn, when to go into fishing mode and when to go into paddling mode. I think that would be one of the most important skills, that demarcation point of this is, probably don't want to attempt this kayak style, because you got a really long boat. You do have a lot of control with that kayak paddle, but it's really more milder situations, and then when to go into paddling mode. There's A or B, right? That would be a skill that I would definitely want people to be aware of, because the last thing you want to do is take a swim while you're fishing, right? You got your rod, you got way too much stuff going on. That would be a definite skill. And then the skill of the oarsman, the guide, as it were, the guy in the back when you're in fishing mode, how to maintain that line, of keeping the speed up of a drift. That's not something a lot of paddlers are used to, especially. So, how many times we teach paddling in whitewater, the back paddle is a no-no? Mm-hmm. That's kind of something different, maybe, with the kayak, because you want to slow the boat.
With the forager.
Yeah, with the forager, you want to slow that boat down so you get an effective drift, right?
Interesting.
So that's kind of a different thing, and that's something I had to, that's something I learned just experimenting with it.
Do you think, I'm just curious, I have no idea, because we haven't really even talked about how we're going to do this yet, but if you're learning how to do a single person pack raft, is that going to be pretty different from learning to paddle a forager?
There'll be similarities. I would say there's more similarities than differences. The big one would be if someone doesn't come from, an oaring background, on a raft or a drift boat, say. That's, even if I had a whitewater oarsman, a whitewater guide versus a fly fishing guide. Fly fishing guides are constantly back rowing, and that's a kind of not a skill that's really taught in whitewater oaring as much. It's more the push, right? There's definitely some back rowing involved, but with fly fishing, if you're learning how to, oar a fly fishing rig, it's all about maintaining and slowing the boat down so your people front and back can get effective drift, or holding a line. With the whitewater, it's about just getting through the rapid, right?
I'm curious, would you want to, if you were teaching a fly fish pack rafting course, it sounds like people would need to have some experience already pack rafting in a single person boat, just so they know how to paddle, or in some sort of boat. What kind of experience do people need to? I
would say paddling in some whitewater capacity. If you're a kayaker, boom, beginning pack rafter, just because you're probably not going to be doing, class 3s, class 2, it's probably going to be more like class 2 water, maybe some class 3s that you would go into that C2 style, which is a different thing too. That would be the big difference, is that C2 style is very different than whitewater paddling, say. Yeah.
Do you think that total beginners could come and take a packraft fly fishing course and just on flat water or real, slow moving water.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, because in that instance, I would be in the back more, and then I would switch and be the angler, they'd be the the stern, show them a little bit in that more just like anything, low stimulus environment, right? Like class 2, like boogie water would be fun. The Rio Grande would be a great river to learn that on, because it's just especially the lower sections, through the collars, it's just super mellow water.
What about the Dolores above Rico?
The Dolores would be amazing because, for a number of reasons. It's too small, it's too big or too small for a raft, right? And the Forager is kind of like this perfect size because it's kind of like the Dolores on the upper section is, it's kind of a mini river. It's a really small river, right? It's and it does not have any, I would say little to none, rafts do go down it and fish, but it's a pretty small window. And then there you get once again, the river, you get to float through private property. And we all know how that goes in Colorado. Yeah, so you get to fish, water that you would normally never be able to wade to, right?
And what's the season, do you think, normally that you could fish that?
The upper, it'd be post runoff. So, it depends. But, June, late after runoff, mid-June is probably when the Dolores is, on the drop. And then...
Pretty short window,
yeah. June to
early July.
Yeah, maybe.
If you're lucky.
Yeah, maybe you get to light some fireworks, but I doubt it.
Yeah.
After the 4th, right?
Right.
But,
Right.
But yeah, it's a small window, but there's some, it's an amazing fishery up there.
So I want to hear, because we've been chatting for a while, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
Nope.
Oh, do you have something else you want to say?
No.
Well, I would like to hear about this trip. I haven't actually heard about your trip to Alaska yet, really, except that it was amazing and mind-blowing and all that stuff. But can you walk us through that trip? We're going to try to get permits this year. Who knows if we'll get them? They said it's a good chance, so maybe we'll do it again this year. But walk us through that trip, from the beginning too, how you got there and everything.
Oh, tip to tail?
Yeah, you had to fly into Arctic Wildlife Refuge, Arctic National Wildlife Refuge.
Yeah, I got a call from our friend Andy Burr, who's been a longtime photographer for Patagonia. Amazing, great friend, and he sent me a text, and I was in the middle of my season on the Rio Grande, so I was kind of cross-eyed. I think I was 21 days in a row or whatever. I was kind of nah, and it was this, hey, are you able to I need 2 anglers for a trip to the Brooks Range in August, and ... are you available? And I was like, well, the Brooks Range has been on my radar for, wow. And so I got the details, and they were so good I almost didn't need to call Stacy to get permission, hey, what do you think about this? And I was like, yeah. And I contacted my friend Sarah to see if she was in, and she kind of had the same reaction. She was like, seriously? Because it is one of those trips, right? It's just wow, this is how, really? I was beyond excited.
And why did they choose packrafts? Curious.
Oh, it's kind of a no-brainer for weight of. It's a really long bush plane ride up there. It's 2.5, 3 hours.
So no-brainer. You were going on this trip.
Yeah, and he's like, I'm thinking about the Kongakut.
The what?
The Kongakut, the river.
Oh,
that was the after these emails with Patagonia. I mean, it was great. It was totally unknown, and so it was perfect. I had no idea of where that river was, and he's like, oh yeah, and there's we're going for char, Arctic char, and I was like, all right, and I reached out to Thor, and he had never been on that river, but he's obviously knows the North Slope and has fished drainages like that before, and so he had dialed me in on flies and what to use and different tactics, and I was like, yeah, okay. And of course I was nervous, and then the bears, and it's just totally unknown, and it was a lot of and I'm in the middle of my guiding season, so it's just kind of like all this stuff, and I was getting things together, which is great, which is super fun. Like, it was all part of it, and did a bunch of homework on the North Slope and the Brooks Range, and of course I knew about ANWR, the Arctic Refuge, and I had read about it, and I've read about it my whole life, just like Arctic Dreams, and tons of books I've read about it, but I was going, and so that was just like, whoa, okay.
I just gotta chill.
Yeah. It's just the edge of the world, and in the Kong is pretty much as far northeast as you can get in Alaska. It's and it drains into the Beaufort Sea in the Arctic Ocean, and it's almost on the Yukon-Canadian border, pretty close. It's a gorgeous drainage, and
how many days were you in there?
We were floating. Originally, our itinerary was 9 days or 8 days on the water, and we had to get out a day before because weather was coming in.
Like a big snowstorm, or
big storm, snowstorm. So up there it's the autumn, and this trip was the middle of August. I think August 12th was our 14th was the day we landed. And it's tricky. We didn't go all the way to the ocean because this time of year there's Arctic fog and the bush planes can't land. Some do go to the Arctic, but it's kind of a double header because this time of year the polar bears are out, and I learned when I was up there that was really they are made to, they're something not to mess with.
Because they hunt people.
They do hunt, and they are made to hunt. Mm-hmm. And where, of course, big brown bear, big grizzlies up there have a reputation too, because the tundra up there is so sparse of life, and everything fights to survive. It reminds me of kind of a little bit of the desert Southwest. Everything is like precious and holds on.
We just gotta have polar bears or grizzlies.
Right. Yeah, but the bears were a non-issue because the caribou had already migrated through. And so all the apex predators, the wolves and the bears, follow the herds. And literally when we saw one mammal, we saw this one tiny little mink. Lots of birds, a lot of songbirds. Like, it was kind of trippy hearing a robin up there. I'm like, really, a robin?
Oh, they migrate all the way up there.
Yeah. It was amazing. And we're looking for these char, which are probably the most beautiful thing I've ever caught.
Really? Why? How so?
They're in their spawn, so there's and they're an androgynous species, so they're a sea run, and some are native that never run in the river, like the local residents that don't run, and some char run to the sea and come back. That's what I learned. And the tricky part is finding them, because they're running up the river. And so this is like glacial clear river, and this was the great beta that Thor gave me. Is like you're looking for them, right? And you're not ghost casting to them. You're hunting.
Will you see them in the water?
Well, we learned the Kong is quick. It's a swift one. It's got a lot of gradient and a lot of CFS to it. But we kind of
class 3.
There was a class there was a class 3 section, which is like it was super fun. Totally doable, totally runnable. It was just fun whitewater, kind of broke it up. But yeah, you can't stop. Like you can't see them from the boat. So you have to stop at every likely spot, get out of the boats, and look and scout. And
you found them?
And we did, yeah. The first day we didn't really. I was just kind of blown away because you're like it's like the place is like perpetual autumn. It's all these it's all gray, green. There's not a lot of like color to it, but all the color is in the different shades of gray and green. It's this autumnal light for the entire day because the sun's so low. So it's kind of like right now, like looking out, like my favorite time of year. I'm like, this place is like perpetual autumn. I mean, it's autumn up there, but that light, that magic hour, is pretty much all day
until winter.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's no light.
And then nothing. Yeah, exactly. Like darkness and
right.
Yeah, everything goes underground. It's just looking for these fish, right? So the second day, like we stopped these gravel bars and we're looking for char and we're not seeing any. And I'm getting like kind of nervous, but I'm also like, no, like we're gonna find them. And so I was on this run and I hook into this fish. I didn't see a char, but it was a grayling, and I was hooping and hollering like I was like my first trout on a fly rod. And Burr's just like laughing at me, and Sarah's running over, and it was just great. I mean, it was just like that. I haven't had that feeling fishing in a long time.
And then did you have that on the whole trip? Like what happens when you got your first char?
Oh my God, we couldn't find them, and so the next run it was like literally maybe 2 or 3 more likely spots. And I was just like, man, where are these things? And so we eddied out, and we're walking up this gravel bar. Sarah goes downstream, I go upstream. And Burr like runs to the top of this cliff on river left, and so you can get the aerial view. And we're looking, and I never forget this because it's the best. Burr's like, they're everywhere, and I was like, and he just starts pointing, and then he's like, it was so cool because he was so excited. I mean, it was just like, and we all were, right? And so we start, it was this like river left bend that went into this cliff band. And so it was just, and then a lot of water, a lot of CFS coming in and really heavy current. And it's all like gravel bar. And so it made it really hard to get to the really big ones. And I'm like, Burr, how big? And he's like, oh my God, he's like, I can't tell, but he's like 30 plus below me. And I'm like, what? And I was like, so I was just like, ugh. And like, if you've ever been in that, I love it. Like you get all fumbly and you start cussing up your casts and like, you're nervous. And like, but there's like up there, I was like, oh, what am I nervous about? Like I've got nowhere to be, like except for right here. I was just like, so I just like started fishing, and it was so deep. I remember I kept my PFD on, I had my waders on, and I was like up to my waist. And anyone's ever waded before, wading's hard, right? And like that much force, I could walk up, and I was getting pushed downstream no matter how hard I was like pushing against the river with my legs, and the gravel was giving way. So I was almost like drifting and like casting these super heavy line, heavy streamer, and I was like getting the drift, and I wasn't quite getting deep enough. And so I like tweaked the weight, and then I remember I connected with my first one, and I was just like, oh my God. And I think Sarah got the first one. Yeah, Sarah did. And it was just like we got the first one, and we forgot how to hold a fish. We forgot how to, we were both so nervous. We were like so excited. It was just like, it was just fishing with your friends. It was amazing. Yeah, and they have lipstick. So They, exactly, ding. Like orange lipstick. And it's the first thing like the three of us noticed. We're like, wow, they're all dressed up. We're making them late to the ball. Just making fish late. Putting them back, and they're just amazing. They look like Christmas.
What, like, so they have orange lipstick, and then what color are?
Some are real silver, but they have char. They have a real white on all their fins, on their pec fins, especially, and then they'll get a little orangish, and then they have these pink dots, like pink is your hat.
And he's pointing at my this is the new tractor hat. Steve
bright pink.
Like really pink.
Yeah, they're gorgeous. Nothing like them.
Oh, I can't wait to see the photos.
Yeah. And then from then on it was, I remember we got back in the boats, and the boat I had was the Ranger, and that was what Thor suggested, and
It's like a single person forager?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
It's a single person forager. I called it the party barge. It was like I could rig 3 rods on it, and we had sewn up these little rod attachments that were super secure, and the Ranger was long enough that it protected the rod tips. Like, we put the reels first in the bow and the tips out the stern, and only about maybe a foot of the tip would stick out, so the rods were really protected. And I rigged up, had 3 rods rigged, and so we had those on quick draw. And then Burr and Sarah were in their narwhals, their whitewater boats. Put the net in. It was pretty seamless.
So that brings to mind, so it's not only, while the forager was sort of what opened your eyes to the possibilities of fishing, the actual, other fishing opportunities come with single person boats, and that's really access.
Yeah, so one night, while we were just playing cribbage around the campfire, I was kind of drifting off in my head, and I was like, man, when I get home, I was like, even something in the Animas, right? You could blow the Ranger. I was like, I'm going to do it, and I've already done it, and it works really. Of course it works well. I blow the Ranger up, and I use it as a taxi, and then I wade out of it, and then I've taken it all the way back down to my house, and then I get on my bike, and then go get my truck, or whatever bike I have. I did it on my big dummy the other day, and it was just fun. I had half day, and I was like, man, I'm going to go do this on the Animas, which is my home river. And instead of getting in my car, which I hate, I can just paddle.
And bike.
Yeah.
Fish.
It was, once again, it's just this is, wow. Why haven't I been doing this the whole time?
Probably because we didn't have those.
We didn't have them.
Yeah. Right, we didn't have those boats.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, we're on an hour. So I'm just going to ask you last question. Is there anything I'm not asking you that you want to share with me about packraft fly fishing or anything that has to do with packraft fly fishing?
I gotta think on that one. I would say I'm kind of cynical by nature, but I would suggest that if you have any misgivings about it, I would, try it. I think you'll be really impressed with it. I think it's just another way to enjoy another facet of a sport that you may think you've already have figured out, or, just like anything. When, you never figured anything out, be open to some new possibilities. It'll surprise you.
Cool. Well, Thad, thank you so much for taking this hour to chat with me. It was a pleasure, as always, talking with you.
My favorite subjects. Thanks, Lizzie. Appreciate it.
Cool.
Thanks so much for joining us for the Beginner's Guide to Packrafting and Bikerafting podcast. If you'd like to follow us, you can do so on Podbean or Spotify. You can also find the show notes on the fourcornersguides.com blog and on the podcast page. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please email us at fourcornersguides@gmail.com.